We have Jaya King with us today. She is a professional artist and California native based out of Sacramento who has been showing, teaching, and demonstrating her work since 2003. Her dynamic paintings marry the balance of technique while pushing the boundaries of texture and color. Her favorite mediums to work with are acrylic and caustic, which is painting with pigmented hot wax. Her love affair with painting extends far beyond the gallery wall. Jaya's popular painting shops gave her students the opportunity to grow as artists and express their individuality. Recently, Jaya pivoted her classroom online, and now her teaching and inspiration continues with the launch of her e-course, Color Mix Masterclass. Jaya's now virtual lectures have an emphasis on technique, personal growth, and exploration through painting. Currently, Jaya is finalizing her ebook on color harmony and working on a new series of large-scale portraits. In 2018, Jaya painted a mural on the Guild Theater as part of the 2018 Wide Open Walls Mural Festival. She has been featured in Sacramento's Inside Publications magazine. Her work has been published in Splash 11, New Directions, Insight 3, The Best of Mixed Media, and In Art Journey Animals, a collection of inspiring contemporary masterworks. In 2016, Jaya developed an encaustic scholarship program, which gave high school students the opportunity to explore this amazing medium. At age 24, she was invited to do a solo show at Stanford University. And Jaya's artwork is in the permanent collections at the Triton Museum of Art in Santa Clara, California, and the Museum of Encaustic Art in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Welcome. And I'll turn it over to you, Jaya.
Thank you, Linda. So my name is Jaya. Like Jaya, but with a J. That's okay. I guess I should have added that into my intro. So my name is Jaya King, and I'm excited to be here with you guys. If you'll notice, there are two Jaya cams. If you're looking at me in gallery view, you'll see Jaya painting cam and you'll see me talking. If you pin the Jaya painting cam, you'll get a close-up of the actual action instead of just the meek. I love it. Yes, thumbs up, Lee. I love it. That way you've got, Zoom savvy Jaya. Two of me here. So encaustic was mentioned earlier, that I'm not sure how that got into the intro of the demo earlier, but I will not be demonstrating encaustic today. I'll be demonstrating an acrylic technique, creating a landscape painting using only 4 colors. I'll be using red, white, or red, yellow, and blue, and white. So this is really a demo that's near and dear to my heart with color mixing. So you'll get to see the range of colors that you can make with 3 colors. And I love it. Everyone's on mute. You guys know what's up. Oh, you guys muted yourself. And then if you have a question, you can unmute and then remute. It's like Zoom etiquette 101. Everybody gets an A. Because I'm sure you've been in demos where someone doesn't know they're on mute. So with this demo, I'll show how to build up a landscape through layers and create beautiful glazes with a specific product that's my favorite to use. And I'll show you that in just a second. Throughout the demo, if you have a question, unmute yourself and shout it out, and then remute yourself. That's usually like the hardest part, is like remuting yourself. And yeah, if you have a comment, or if you're like, oh, Jaya, can you go back a little bit and talk about this, please, just shout it out. So I encourage interactivity. And, I think it was kind of cool that you mentioned Wide Open Walls, and that you were interested in murals. So I just think that that's kind of like a cool, oh, hey, yeah, you guys found it online. But yeah, that's a whole nother level of scaling up painting basically bigger wall, bigger brushes. Easy peasy. So all right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to zip on over to my painting cam, and I'm going to pin myself in full screen speaker because I know how to do this. Awesome. I swear, Zoom is so exciting. I had my camera all set up horizontally, and then when you tune in with the app, it switches it vertically. So I'm like, oh, great. Let me redo all of that stuff 5 minutes before the demo is supposed to start. So that's always like a fun little, oh, what's going to happen with Zoom today? Okay, cool. So if you pin the Jaya painting cam, you'll see my little studio setup. And what I wanted to show off first were the materials that I'll be using. I have, of course, my canvas set that is a sort of a inexpensive paper canvas. It's actually not true canvas. It is a sort of like a faux plasticky paper that has the texture of canvas, and I love working with that for my studies, my demos, my practices. And it's a pad of 10 sheets, so you can zip through them and paint both sides. Very handy stuff. I'll be working on a pad of palette paper. This is my favorite palette. You could really make a mess with it, throw it away when you're finished. And of course, the most important elements are the acrylic paints. I use Golden Brand acrylic paint. This is my go-to brand. I absolutely love their quality. And I just use their standard heavy body colors. But with acrylics, it's kind of cool because you have a lot of different viscosities that you can work with. You can work with soft body or fluid or extremely liquid high flow acrylics and get watercolor. Very cool stuff. So gold is my favorite, and I always demonstrate with this brand. I'll be mixing my acrylic with a product called Matte Medium. This is an extender. It's translucent. When it comes out of the bottle, it almost looks like runny Elmer's glue, if you will. But when you mix it with your paint, it takes on color and the properties of that pigment. So this is excellent for using glazes, and I'll do glazes for you today with Matte Medium. I pour this into a ketchup bottle just so it's easy to squeeze out. The wide mouth containers make it a little bit challenging to, evenly distribute your matte medium. So I put this in a ketchup container. So this is inside of this little guy. Honestly, when I do these demos, I tend to really just use 1 or 2 brushes. And essentially, my favorite brushes are by a company called Princeton. It is their Umbria line brush. They're a synthetic brush where they have a soft, very soft tip, but they're stiff enough to be able to hold the acrylic and really push it around, because you want a brush that can really withstand or stand up to that thick viscosity of that plasticity of the acrylic. 1 inch wide brush. I'll be using this probably for 99% of the painting. And then I have my kind of brushes in the wings in case I need to get some detail. These are about 1/2 inch, 5/8 of an inch wide. So I have these little guys just off to the side in case I need to, grab one really fast. Whenever I work with acrylics, I always have a paper towel close by so that I can really manage how much water is on my brush. And of course, my water for rinsing and for sort of loosening up that texture of acrylic. So whenever you kind of see me do a little something over here, I'm grabbing just a little bit of water and adding that into my paint. So those are my materials. And I wanted to show you sort of that versatility of the 4 color mix. And I have to say color mixing is my favorite subject matter to teach. So even when I'm going to give a demonstration on landscape or skies or, you know, aspen trees, at the crux of it is working with a limited color palette and learning how to effectively mix. So even though, you know, we'll be painting a landscape, working within those colors and understanding those color relationships is, you know, at the core of it. So this is one that I did at, on another demo, or this is what I did on another demo for another group. And this is using the same 4 colors. I'm using, for my red, I'm using quinacridone magenta or quin magenta, Hansa yellow light, ultramarine blue, and titanium white. So these 4 colors created this piece. And please excuse the zoom down sampling of the image here, but you can see that there's a little bit of a difference in color here. These are the same 4 colors, but you can get a little bit of a more variation. And finally, this piece was also done using the same 4 colors. So the range is really, you know, what I'm trying to convey, just showing you these 3 paints.
And what was
I think that we
the yellow color that you used?
Sure. The yellow is Hansa yellow light. And when working with a limited color palette, be it a red, yellow, blue, you know, maybe even white and black, you don't need to stick with, oh no, I only need to use quinacridone magenta, Hansa yellow light, and ultramarine blue. No, you can use the limited color palette of, say, like alizarin crimson, yellow ochre, Prussian blue, if you want something a little bit more traditional. It's really just the trick of sticking within those 4 colors to achieve your mixes and dive into that range, which is what really gives your painting that sense of harmony. So the yellow that I'm using, this guy, Hansa yellow light, this is just a gorgeous, somewhat lemony, I would say, semi-transparent yellow. It's not 100% transparent, but I just absolutely love using these 4 colors, and these are what I've used in my classes for years. So these colors are really, really under my, I've really got them, you know, under my belt. I was about to say under my skin, but that wouldn't sound right because they're not under my skin. Okay, sweet. So before I jump into even toning my canvas, which is how I always like to begin my pieces, I am going to get a few marks down to get a composition laid in, and I really keep this loose and I allow myself to veer off course whenever I do my paintings. And so to keep it super simple, I'm just going to give myself, and this is just a quick little sketching pencil, little background hill. I don't even know if you guys can see it. I've got to make it a little bit darker. Thank you, Zoom. There we go. I think that I want to give myself another there. Excellent. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 lines marked on my sheet of canvas set, and that's going to be good enough for me to jump in. Whenever I squeeze out my matte medium, I like to start with about a quarter size or $1/2 size amount of matte medium. And then I squeeze out about a dime size amount of the colors I'd like to start with. And when I begin toning my canvas, or essentially laying down that first layer, instead of wetting my brush, I grab the matte medium with a nice dry brush. And I would say that one of my favorite colors to start with is this beautiful coral that the quinacridone magenta and the Hansa yellow light create. And this original tone, just putting this down, it's an imperfect layer, which means that you see brush strokes. It looks a little bit, you know, funky. You can see, you know, the edges of that brush, the way that it, you know, hits that canvas. It's not super hyper smooth. You can get it nice and smooth, but for this first layer, because I'm going to be covering this up with so many more layers of paint, I'm not too worried about what this first looks like. So I'm going pretty heavy-handed with how much matte medium I'm using. Let me hold that up. Oh, it's opposite, so hold it over here. So you can see that the matte medium looks like it's white, but it goes on clear and it creates a glaze of that color. I absolutely love the combo of the quinacridone magenta and the Hansa yellow light. I just think that this is one of the prettiest, almost like a salmon color that you can create. And I'm just kind of getting this first layer down. And the reason why I'm starting with this, you know, fairly abstracted beginning layer of mixed color is because I want, as I continue my painting, I want it to be able to peek through the subsequent layers, so it adds a really nice element of almost like this spark or this energy. I'm applying a lot of pressure with my brush, just really getting that color on there. Sometimes I'll grab just the true color. Sometimes I'll grab the color and the matte medium. Oh my gosh, that's a hot mess. So this beginning layer, I'm able to see my pencil marks still peeking through. I know that those will be covered with subsequent color. And this hot mess, let's see if I can. I don't know if you could see on this piece, but wherever you see that little bit of almost like that orange or coral peeking through, even over here on the edge, wherever you see that warmth peeking through, that is from this layer. And so you really are only going to see like 1% of this at the end of the painting. But it makes the world of difference. Beginning with a different color would create a different effect during the painting or at the end of the painting. But I just find that I really enjoy this, almost like the salmon coral sunset tone of the quinacridone magenta and the Hansa yellow light. So I'm going to prepare my palette with all 4 of my colors. I've got, I've got my quinacridone magenta, my Hansa yellow light, and if I could open up my new ultramarine blue, and my titanium white. I like to put my titanium white far away from my matte medium because you don't want to confuse the two and accidentally grab one or accidentally grab the titanium white thinking that you're going to create a glaze and then be sadly surprised when it is not your matte medium. So resetting my palette, I'm just really like gearing up for applying a fair amount of paint. I've got a bunch of matte medium, I've got my 4 colors, and I have plenty of mixing space. And when I lay out my palette, I basically just want my colors to be far apart from each other. I don't put them, you know, right next to each other so that they contaminate each other. And that's also frustrating. So keeping your colors farther apart on your palette means that you have a little bit more control of your palette. So there's a little super tip for you. All right, I'm just rinsing my same brush that I used. And whenever I rinse my brush, I always squeegee off that excess water on the paper towel so that, you know, I'm not going to overwater my acrylics.
Rockland Fine Arts demo.
You're not going to class?
Yeah, I am.
That's what you said.
I can guarantee you that someone is not on mute and is having some sort of challenge with someone else. I was trying to see who it is. Like, oh, what's going on? This is the demo. Sorry. Okay, let me repin myself so I can see what I'm
Carolyn,
doing.
are you able to mute everybody?
All right, you'll figure that out. Let's do that. Okay, so the way that I work my landscapes is I begin from the sky and I work my way down to the foreground. And so I begin essentially with my sky to my background, my middle ground, and then my foreground. And the way that I like getting my sky in there, and you'll notice that I'll be grabbing a little bit of water, maybe a little bit of medium as I'm doing my mixes, just to really like slightly loosen up my paint. So for my sky, I absolutely love this color. And I like to grab with my brush instead of work with a palette knife, at least in this particular painting process. The way that I like to begin my sky is I create almost like a marine blue, which is a fair amount of the ultramarine blue and a little bit of the Hansa yellow light. And as I mix that up, let me see if I can give you a little, I know it looks black on the computer, on the Zoom screen. Let's see if I can give it a little tint so you can see that pretty color. There it is. That way you could tell I'm not working with black. Excellent. So this guy, I think, is going to be a nice beginning to my sky layer. And I'm getting it to the saturation where I want. And I'm going to begin at the top and work my way down to the horizon. And my brush strokes are very horizontal, and it's almost like I'm sweeping a little front door or a little welcome mat. My brush strokes, I'm also very conscious of leaving some of the original tone peeking through. And what this does is it allows me to possibly add some movement of clouds in my sky. And I usually like to have my sky kind of have sort of a directional feel into that back horizon, which helps to create a nice little focal point. As my clouds come closer and closer to that horizon, I'm going to add just a little more white, more yellow into my sky mix, sort of like turning on the sunlight. To my horizon and really saying, hey, this is where that sky meets earth. My brush strokes again are still very controlled, like I'm sweeping a little welcome mat back and forth. And someone asked me in a past demo, holding your brush. I hold my brush almost like I'm holding a sumi brush, and I have the weirdest grip on my brush. I don't hold it like a pencil. I hold it almost like, I don't even know how to describe this, but it's perpendicular with the canvas. And that's how I can achieve, you know, this soft, you know, back and forth brush stroke. I don't know, it's not how I hold my pencil or my pen, but I guess I hold my brush a little bit more bizarre. Excellent. As I keep playing in this sky, I'm going to sneak a little bit more titanium white into this mix. And if you notice on my palette, you could see that I have this transition of color from that marine into that slight tint, a little bit more yellow, and then finally into that white. So it shows how you can, you know, transition your colors in terms of saturation and value as well. I'm giving myself some nice, like a soft mistiness to my clouds. The matte medium is an excellent tool to create atmosphere. I added a little bit of matte medium cloud color, and it created this semi-opaque glaze. It's semi-opaque because it has the transparent matte medium, and then it also has a little bit of the opaque titanium white. And so that matte medium gives a slight translucency and therefore delicacy to the sky, or to this particular color where I'm using it in the sky. For the sky closest to my hills, I really want to turn the light on, that sunshine light. So it really looks like that sunlight is coming through. There it is. I have to check what you guys see on your end. So this gives a nice, kind of like this distant sunrise effect to this. And there's just a little bit of that tone peek through, and that kind of, to me, it adds a bit of interest, and I can choose to hide that tone as I, you know, if I continue with my sky, or, you know, leave it and let it be part of that, you know, semi-abstracted element. Great, I think that that sky is fine for now. And I just have to ask, and you're able to, you have permission to come off mute to answer this question. Oh, someone's riding their little motorbike. I don't know if you can hear, but that wasn't even a motorbike. That was some sort of awful little hatchback. I mean, once a motorbike drives by, there we go. That's the fun thing about doing demos in your garage, is you get the neighborhood as part of the demo. So you have permission to come off mute to answer this question. How many times did I totally rinse my brush in the sky?
Not once.
Not once. So
Jaya?
working, how cool is that? Like you did, like working efficiently through a painting also helps the flow. And so by hanging out with these limited colors, it's easier to kind of migrate through the painting without resetting your brush, rinsing, resetting your brush. And so during the sky, I didn't rinse my brush once. I transitioned from that marine all the way into that lightest, almost that lemony tint.
So I have a question.
Sure.
When you added the yellow and you hadn't rinsed your brush, how come you didn't get green?
Oh, it is technically a green because there was a little bit of blue mixed in there. but it's balanced because it's not the yellow and the white outweighed the blue. And so therefore it didn't resonate as, you know, like spring green, but you can call it like a, maybe even like a celadon, but I would still consider it green. It's not our stereotypical landscape green, but because there is a yellow and a blue in that mix, it is technically green with that tint of white. So let's see if I can't see it. There we go. So because of that balance of how much yellow, how much white, and how little blue, it doesn't read as your quote unquote green. But technically it is. I didn't totally rinse it and just use yellow and white. That little bit of blue in there helps it to be a little bit more harmonious with the sky. So that's kind of why it doesn't look green, but we can still call it green. So good question. Okay, cool. Remute yourselves. Thank you. So now that I finished with my sky, I'm going to transition down into my earth. And I didn't rinse my brush totally and completely because I want a little bit of that sky color to be in those furthest hills. And I just wanted to confirm that the demo goes until noon, right? We have an hour demo, or are we doing an hour and a half? I just wanted to double check before getting like too involved in drawing blades of grass or something. I think I go until noon. I'll
We
take
usually
the
go
silence.
till noon. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That helps me. Awesome. Cool. So my furthest hill, I'm going to bring some of that sky color back into the mix. And what I sometimes like doing is I'll grab some of my previous color that I used if I already have something that's working. Excellent. So the hill that is furthest away, to make it really have that atmospheric effect, whenever you're looking at something that is farther away, especially in a landscape in a hill, it's almost going to take on the element of the sky above it. And that's a little bit different if you're looking at like a backlit sky, like an evening sky or a night sky. But generally, the hill that is furthest away, imagine taking a little bit of that sky color and adding it into that hill to give your color reference. And so what I mixed up for my hill was the initial marine color for my sky, but I made it a little bit more saturated or a little bit different than the sky right above it. So that way you could see a little bit of a difference. And if it's not different enough, then adjust on the palette and get her down. Again, my brush strokes are almost like a very long sweep, very similar to the sky. And the brush strokes also kind of give the impression of the slope of the hill. While I'm in that background hill, I'm sneaking in a little bit of that last sky color just because it's pre-made. I'm going to give myself just a little highlight on the crest of the hill so it looks like it is just kissed by that light. And that gives just a little bit more dimension to that background hill. Now that I'm getting a good solid structure for this hill, I can transition into the next background hill. We could call it the furthest middle ground hill or the closest background hill, whatever floats your boat. And I think that now that we are beginning to transition closer, I'm going to back off on how much white I'm using, and I'm going to make my colors just a little bit more colorful or a little bit more saturated. So instead of having as much white in my furthest hill, I'm backing off on that white. And if I put this color down that I just made, I know it looks like I'm mixing black because, you know, Zoom's not being very helpful with, you know, the accuracy of this color mix. But this is another marine color that I've mixed. If I put this down, it's going to be, I would say, very emerald compared to the softness of this hill or this hill next to it. So to neutralize it just a touch, I'm sneaking in a little bit of my quinacridone magenta. There we go. And I'm making sure that it's, again, a little bit more saturated than that hill behind it, so that it pushes that hill to the background. There it goes. Within this hill, I'd like to give her a little highlight. I don't know why my hills have genders. Sometimes a hill will be a boy, sometimes my hill will be a girl. So I'm going to give this girl a little highlight. Still using that same number 10 bright brush that I began with. And brush strokes are kind of following the curvature of that hill. There we go. This is really just laying the foundation down for the dynamics of the landscape, the shape of the landscape. Now I'm on my next hill. I'm going to get that color out of my brush. There's still some white in there. And now that we're coming a little bit closer, I think that I'm going to kind of shake things up with this hill, and instead of doing just, you know, a closer green hill, I think that I would like this hill to be a little bit more neutral in terms of it's not so blue-green. It's going to have more of a earthy brownish quality. So instead of it being so green, I've snuck in a lot more of my quinacridone magenta into this mix. And so now I'm really starting to make this a chromatic neutral. So yes, this is much more black compared to, you know, these other blue greens that we've been mixing. And just to kind of show you that color, if I tint it out, You can see that it has a little bit more purple in there. Get that white out of there. So this is a really fun color to use because it starts to look very earthy, and it's easy to tweak it depending on how much of one primary or another primary you use. So this is a more chromatic green. That quinacridone magenta mixed in there. And so it has a little bit more of a brownish quality. So that sloping hill starts to kind of flatten out into what looks almost like a little valley that I'm going to do. Well, that's fun. Good to know. All of my little landscapes that I do are from my imagination. I don't have a photo reference. Just happens to be the way that I work. I think that especially here, you're starting to see the benefit of that original tone that we put down, peeking through that hill, starting to look really, really earthy. And this very muted green color, I can even start to transition it from this hill into the hill next to it. I added some matte medium into that chromatic green that I made, and I want you to see how I can start to tie these guys together. That matte medium is like my best friend when it comes to acrylic painting. That's a nice way to tie those two together. For the highlight on this hill, instead of just defaulting to white, now that this hill has a fair amount more yellow mixed in it, I'm really just going to add more of that Hansa yellow light into that chromatic green mix. See if I could get it right there. And that's going to be a much more cohesive highlight with this particular hill. Yeah, that's starting to look nice and lush and earthy. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and, you know, pop in. I just kind of assume, like, when I'm just sort of talking to myself, that everyone is just following along okay. All right, very cool. So I have my big middle ground hill. Now here I am at my either my foreground hill, or I could continue to make this a valley, but I think I do want a nice closed hill that I can do some detail work in. So I'm going to give myself, again, that same almost like that chromatic green that I made, where it really looks like it's black on your screen. But because of the balance of how much yellow I'm adding into it, it has a nice olive quality. I'm going to really lay down the foundation of that guy. All right. With this closest hill, I'm going to let this dry for just a minute because I'd like to put some final touches on it, but I need to wait for it to dry before I get to do that. So while I have that waiting period, what I'm going to do is I'm going to zip through and I'm going to give myself just a quick little final layer of glaze to sort of tie everything together. And I'll also be able to fill in some of these gaps down here. But I just need this paint in the foreground to dry a little bit more before I do this final touch. So I'm going to go back to my sky. And I'm going to make that sort of like that sunrise color. That is predominantly the white, the yellow, and there's that hint of blue, which yes, technically makes it green, but I would say that it's kind of like a celadon green as opposed to like a spring green. I'm grabbing a lot of that matte medium to make it nice and translucent. And I'm making the decision to like raise the sun on my landscape. So it's almost like the sun is rising on the painting itself. Creating a little bit more contrast from that sky to that background hill. Again, mimicking those first brush strokes where I'm almost like sweeping a little welcome mat. And that matte medium is allowing me to make that beautiful semi-opaque glaze. Wonderful. With this sky color that's on my brush, I can immediately pop it into the highlights of my furthest hill. Please excuse that my hand is covering a lot of these little moves that I'm making. But this is just really still the same color that I just used in the sky. And I'm highlighting the crests of these hills in the background. And I can even bring that same highlight into my middle ground hills, finding the crest of the hill. The matte medium is what makes it a little bit more delicate. There we go. And it kind of looks like there's maybe even a settled mist. Here I am now on my closer middle ground hill. I'm just sneaking in a bit more of my yellow in there. Still a fair amount of that matte medium in this mix. And my brush strokes are finding the slope of the hill. Whenever I add the matte medium, I mix it with the color on my palette instead of grabbing it and putting it on my canvas or canvasette. But I like having that mix where I want and correct before I put it on my palette, or I'm sorry, on my canvas. So it's kind of fun. Is this original toned background is starting to look, oh great. Can you guys hear that motorbike? There he goes. Okay. The cool thing about that original toned canvas is it almost gives the impression of like a little path behind this hill. So I'm just going to kind of roll with that and say, hey, yeah, that's going to be our dirt path leading us into our painting. So I'm going to mix up a nice, kind of like a reddish chromatic brown. I'm just going to give that a little bit of emphasis and commit to that path. And my brush strokes are going to curl some of that brown up into my little hillside here. That's kind of a fun little discovery. Hey, my toned canvas can be a little path. Awesome, I could dig it. Now that I'm finally at that last big kind of like black hole of a hill, let's bring this guy home with some nice detail. And I'm going to give this guy some dried grass just to kind of make him stand out from the rest and bring him forward. So my dried grass color here looks sort of like almost like a taupe, but it is a mix of all four colors. There's the red, the yellow, the blue, and also the white. And with this dried grass, my brush strokes are important to consider before just, you know, going at your painting. But the question is, do I want my grass to sort of follow the strokes of the hill behind it, or do I want the grass to kind of give the impression almost like I'm cradling this pathway as you're walking in through these dunes. So I think I'm going to give this guy, we got the before, soon to be after. I'm going to give this guy a directional brush stroke opposite this hill. And I'm conscious of how the little tips of the grass sort of extend over that dark underbelly. And just like with the first step of toning the canvas, where we left a little bit of it peeking through the painting throughout, it's important to do that with these subsequent layers, to allow the layer underneath to show through, because here, that dark, so that dark initial like black hole of a hill, if I covered it all up, you know, I'm losing what power it could have to create a little bit of depth and darkness underneath these blades of grass. Zip through these little guys. So that last little, like that last little element of detail. Oh yeah, I have 2 minutes left. I can do some more in 2 minutes. That last little element of detail is emphasized because there's something dark in it.
We won't hold you to the hour exactly.
Oh, so it's okay if I do like an hour and 5 minutes.
Oh, for sure.
You guys are so sweet. It's like you don't have to end. Sweet. So I'm just going to go just like a little bit over, just to kind of tie it all together, because I'd like to do just one more layer on this first hill, if that's all right with you guys. Awesome. So with this color that's on my brush, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of bring this dried grass idea, tweak it just a little bit. I'm going to bring this dried grass idea to the hill behind it. Very slightly, but just to kind of tie the two together. That way it doesn't look like, well, wait, this path looks like it's close and this hill looks like it's closer. Why can't you see the grass on this hill? So this is just a way that they can kind of like look a little bit more cohesive. And that way they're more buddies. They're kind of tied together. And for a quick little landscape study, you know, that we did today, using only 4 colors, the quinacridone magenta, Hansa yellow light, ultramarine blue, and titanium white. Hopefully with this study, you can see the range of what you can mix in order to create a landscape that has some receding depth, beginning with that toned canvas that has that gorgeous, yet somewhat chaotic coral salmon underbelly, the way that that color peeks through, especially through its complement of green, you know, that base creates a you know, beautiful vibration that is tough to achieve with, say, like opaque layer upon layer upon layer. So that initial color really lends itself. Let me give just some up close blades here. The marine blue and the, like the celadon sunlit sky, how that transitions into the hills and ultimately the chromatic neutrals and browns and chromatic greens that we ran into in our sort of middle ground hills, how those colors transitioned into the dried grass and almost like a wheat color along with this reddish path. The 4 colors that we use today just have a beautiful range to create something that has, you know, an immense amount of depth and harmony. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unpin myself and put me on gallery view so I could see everybody, so I could properly say thank you to everyone. Pull up a chair. There I am. So awesome. I really, you know, had a blast working with you guys, and I hope that with the demo you were able to see how you can use a limited color palette to create a landscape that has depth and dimension, atmosphere, and a harmonious range of colors. This is something that you can practice with any red, yellow, blue, and white, and see the relationships between those colors. And this is something that is just, I'm so passionate about, and I absolutely love, you know, I could talk about color mixing until the cows come home. So thank you guys for having me. And if you have any questions or comments or anything else, please come off mute. I just wanted to say thank you.
I think it was a wonderful, wonderful
That was
presentation.
great.
Thank you, Robin.
Okay.
Hopefully you're inspired. I heard someone say this, like, oh, I want to paint, but I'm just kind of like not really wanting to paint. And, you know, pick up the brush and the 4 colors and, you know, some thick paper and start, you know, putting it all together. Oh, thank you. You guys are sending chats too. I'm glad that you learned a lot. This is something that if you're a watercolorist, it's okay to omit the white if you're a watercolorist, unless you're, you know, going for a particular opacity. But, you know, this is, you could totally translate this to watercolors and basically any kind of inspiration to get you painting and creating and trying something new and, you know, on your own terms. Any other questions?
Hi, Jaya. Jaya, will you share with us about your classes?
Oh, my classes? Oh, you were kind of quiet there, Linda. Am I quiet for all of you guys? Maybe it's my Mac. Okay. So yes, if you're interested in color mixing, like if you are a color nerd, and I'm talking about like a serious color nerd, like you're ordering the books from Amazon, like they're going out of style. And if you want to just really dive into color mixing, check out Jaya's Art School, because I have a color mixing course that is very in-depth. It's I would say that it is sort of like the color mixing course for the incredibly serious beginner. So if you're like, oh, I'm just gonna go on YouTube, I'm gonna mix red, yellow, and blue. It's like, this is not that course. This is the course where we talk about pigments and transparency and translucency and opacity and all of the big vocabulary words. So Jaya's Art School, you can check out my Color Mix Masterclass. And I just kind of wanted to put feelers out there. Linda, when you first connected with me, you mentioned a possibility of a simple follow-up workshop. So if I can get sort of like a either like yays or nays in the chat, I came up with a follow-up workshop that maybe we could do in 2 or 3 weeks. That would be about landscape color mixing using 4 color. Oh, I got a thumbs up. Yes, that is mixing 4 colors. And it would be open to your medium. If you are an oil painter, if you're a watercolorist, if you're acrylic, use your media. It doesn't have to be limited to acrylic. And it would be really focused just on the mixing aspect using a limited color palette. So this is really sort of like landscape color mixing CrossFit, where you see what you can do to create a whole range of colors. And you saw the demo today, and you know what you can create with these colors, but you can pick your own red, yellow, and blue. And so I have that. I was like tentatively going to send out. I'm like, oh, let me just see what people think. I have sort of like a little blurb about the workshop that I would like to send to Linda, and she can blast it out to you guys. It would be $25 for an hour and a half, and I would walk you through, you know, how we can create some beautiful like orangey-ish landscape colors. What happens when you mix these violetish landscape colors, and you know, how far can you push these greenish landscape colors, and all of them you can consider how you would use in your own art, specifically in your own landscapes. And you know, if you're not a landscape painter, these are portrait colors too. You use this green for a tree, you also use it for another painting and a portrait. So if you're interested, what I'd like to do is I'd like to send Linda that information today. She can send it out to you guys, and you guys can connect with me. Does that sound like a good idea?
Yes.
Yay! Yay! And just to really like clarify, we'll be color mixing, we'll be making like ranges of swatches. We're not going to be doing a landscape painting. We're not going to like do trees, but we're going to see the range of colors, and you know, I'll describe like, oh, this is why this is looking like this, and this is how you can make it look less like that. So that's kind of what, you know, what I had in mind. And yeah, I was thinking like, you know, $25, and we can all just, you know, share our colors and say, oh man, I finally got that green I was looking for, because greens aren't necessarily easy, and you don't need to keep buying paint to make your green, because you know what's up with that. Awesome. So I'm going to send that to Linda today, so she can blast that to you guys, and you can connect with me. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jaya.
Rockland. It's the first time I've demoed for you guys. Thank you for having me, and you know, let me know, you know, if you'd like something. You know, I'm happy to come back, and I'll be in touch about that landscape color mixing workshop. And I'm thinking maybe like three Saturdays from today. Just planting that seed 3 Saturdays from today. Unless something drastically happens in the next 10 minutes that I forgot to look at my Google Calendar. All right, everyone. Thank you for having me. You guys have a good rest of your meeting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Jaya.
you.